Welcome to the Psychology Talk podcast. I'm your host, Dr. Scott Hoye. The Psychology Talk podcast is a unique conversation about psychology from around the globe. We bring you ideas from mental health practitioners and experts to keep you informed about the latest issues and trends. Topics include developments and research in psychotherapy and social sciences, hypnosis and mind-body treatments, meditation and spirituality, and new treatment modalities. And while you're listening, please take a moment to subscribe and give us a review at your favorite streaming site. It helps us to grow and further reach people with quality programming. And now, here's the episode. Well, hello, everyone, and welcome to the Psychology Talk podcast. Today, my guest is Karie Reinertson. Karie Reinertson is the program manager of the Open Path Healing Arts Collective. The Healing Arts Collective is a nonprofit nationwide network of holistic, health-focused professionals dedicated to providing healing arts care at a steeply reduced rate to people in need. The collective includes massage therapists, coaches, nutritionists, and other healers. Karie Reinertson, welcome to the show.
Thanks, Scott. Thanks so much for having me.
Oh, you're most welcome. So, we're a big fan here at the Psychology Talk podcast, and I personally am a big fan of the Open Path Collective for providing people who are in need, who don't have insurance coverage or have crazy deductibles, that they can approach therapy on a sliding scale and work with a professional licensed or certified person. And I was excited when I saw that they had expanded into healing arts, like somatic arts and hypnosis and other type of mind-body healing arts, to expand to help people get those services that probably most of them are not covered by insurance or loosely covered. But I just wanted to have you on the show to talk a little bit about, or a lot about the collective and what your mission is and who's involved and how people can get involved, and a little bit about yourself.
Yeah, appreciate that. So as you know, Open Path has been around, I think it's about 9 years now. And
wow.
A couple years ago, I know the executive director, Paul, had been talking about expanding the program to offer more complementary services and modalities. And when this opportunity to help build the Healing Arts program came up, it felt really aligned with both my experiences and just where we are at culturally. It feels like it's really helpful to have somatic therapies in addition to talk therapy. Mm-hmm. So my background is in art and design, and I've also worked in nonprofits. So I've done a lot of administration I worked for the National Endowment for the Arts out of school, those kinds of things. So this feels like a nice blend of those two things. But when I used to live in Vermont, and I met my husband there, and we moved to Asheville about 8 years ago. And when I got here, I started having headaches and numbness and tingling in my hands and feet, and just seemed odd. It didn't, it kept coming up, and it was just one of those things where I was like, okay, I guess this is now something that I'm experiencing. I kept waiting for it to move on, but it wasn't. So I started seeing a couple people about it to see what was going on. Nobody could really give me a good answer. Then I started having seizures, and that was the thing that really propelled me into really wholeheartedly going to see neurologists and all these different folks to find out what was happening. And nobody could give me an answer until an old friend who also had lived in Vermont mentioned Lyme disease. And so I started pushing into that deeper, and I ended up getting an IGeneX test, which is, one of the better tests for testing Lyme. And it was positive, which was really helpful because a lot of tests are not, they don't show Lyme. But I went through a whole process of a year after that of doing an antibiotic protocol, going to see nutritionists, acupuncturists. And through that process, it was just, it was so like physically exhausting. Like I had the kind of typical joint pain and fatigue, like all of the Lyme disease symptoms. And but also it's just a really big financial strain. So I couldn't work as much because of all of the pain I was experiencing. And then on top of that, there isn't generally insurance that covers these sorts of practitioners. Mm-hmm. So it had been in my mind already that, God, if there was a way for people to access these services, I felt fortunate that I was able to figure out how to do that and balance that. But not everybody is able to do that. And a lot of these things can feel like luxuries in our culture. So it had been on my mind that these are tools that are really helpful for people. Sometimes Western medicine isn't enough, or having this in conjunction to Western medicine or therapy. There are just so many ways that these modalities can bridge the gap. So when this opportunity came to help build this program, it felt really near and dear and felt like a great fit. And because I got to craft the program with Paul, the executive director, we felt like we could really try to tailor it to help the most people in need. I mean, like every program, when you start it, and once you launch it into the world, you learn more about what people are looking for. So we've adjusted in different ways. But we launched to practitioners last April 2021, and then we just launched to clients in April of this year. So we are now seeing more and more clients come in and more people getting help, which feels really exciting and rewarding.
Excellent. Well, how's the response been from the practitioners?
It's been great. So many people have said that they've thought about the same thing, how that they wish that there was something like this out there. It makes so much sense. And I think in the same way that OpenPath helps with creating a system for therapists to make sliding scale easy, it does the same for practitioners. It helps vet clients for them and, avoid any kind of awkward conversation, or just create a system, like a clear structure for a way to do that for people.
Okay, excellent. Is there, obviously, I know, having been part of OpenPath on the therapy side of things, they look for licensure and whatnot. What might the criteria be for people signing up as practitioners? Is there any certification or licensure on the Healing Collective end?
Yeah, so right now we accept people from 5 different disciplines, and that's acupuncture, coaching, massage therapy, nutrition, and yoga. And so each of those have their own criteria. So I can let you know all of the different eligibility requirements, but on our site it lists all of those out. So acupuncture, they have to be a licensed acupuncture that's graduated from an accredited school of acupuncture or traditional Chinese medicine or East Asian medicine. Coaches have to provide a certificate of completion from a recognized coaching institution with at least 60 training hours. Also, folks that have gone to school for might have a master's in psychology or social work or other related degree that decided to move into coaching rather than psychotherapy can apply as coaches, as long as they aren't offering mental health. Like the mental health piece, we really want to make sure that licensed therapists are offering that to folks. So coaches, including like life and career coaches. Massage therapists need to be licensed, and nutritionists have to have a bachelor's degree or equivalent from a nutrition focused program. Yoga practitioners have to have a 200-hour training. So we are trying to vet folks as much as possible so that the client has a good experience with whatever practitioner that they're seeing.
Excellent. And I know that I think I was astounded by the number of people who'd signed up for OpenPath, both on the client side and the therapist side, on the psychotherapy side of things. But what right now? How many how many practitioners are there available for potential clients?
There are quite a few. There's, I think we're almost at 1,000 right now. And
Wow.
we have a couple states where there aren't practitioners signed up yet. And those are more rural states like North Dakota and South Dakota.
Mm-hmm.
But we pretty much have at least one practitioner in every state. Obviously, bigger urban areas have quite a few more, but it's really growing.
Wow. Okay.
Yeah.
And some of these, like coaches obviously can do telework, right? So
Mm-hmm.
that's if somebody, and I don't think there's any boundaries. I don't think there's any licensure boundaries. Like if you're sitting in New York and you're coaching, you could see somebody in California or vice versa, right?
Right. So some of these like massage therapy, you'll want to find somebody one-on-one that's nearby.
I think so. I don't think they figured out telehealth for massage therapy quite
No.
yet. Yeah.
And I have to say that once that's figured out, I don't think I want to do
it. You go into the virtual world and have a virtual massage. I'm sure they're working on it. Somebody in Silicon Valley or in someone in their mom's basement is working on that algorithm. So.
Absolutely. So not interested. But for coaching, nutrition, and even yoga, that you can do that can be like a telehealth or a Zoom call. But yeah, it gets trickier with massage and acupuncture.
True. Is there any possibility of expanding into other modalities or practitioners?
We started out with 12 disciplines.
Wow.
And the reason is we really just wanted to make this care as accessible to as many people as possible. But really, this is a small new program. I work on this with, Paul and Lisa, executive director and deputy director, and then the marketing team. So the amount of paths or educational paths to a lot of these disciplines, it can be so complex that it really just, it got really challenging to properly vet each person because so many people have so many different ways that they've been certified. And so just based on our capacity, it just made the most sense to keep it really focused and clear right now. And then in the future, if we need to, we can open it up. But also, honestly, in the past year, the folks that have signed up have really signed up for these 5 disciplines. There are others that people have signed up for a little bit, but really these are the main things that people are looking for. And we're really looking for a way to make this as accessible and sort of mainstream as possible, to make these things not feel like outside or other. They can really be for everyone.
Yeah, I'm very much open to alternative forms of healing and yoga and meditation and things like that. So I always forget that the wider culture out there might still think it's exotic if somebody does yoga or odd or acupuncture or acupressure or massage therapy are still considered, I guess the LA elites stomping ground rather than middle America's access to healing and growth.
Exactly. Right. And we want people to feel like they're welcome in, like these are really helpful tools. And even if they aren't for any kind of ailment, they can just be for overall well-being or relaxation. They aren't just for people that are of privilege or, of a certain culture. And they really are for everyone.
I wonder, I did take a moment to look around the website. I know you have a blog, but is there any other kind of like mission or marketing goal to kind of mainstream these and make more transparent these modalities for healing and well-being?
Yeah, we're working on that approach. I mean, the past 2 years have really been about building the program and making sure that the website works, everything works, people are signing up, all of the systems are clarified. But right now we're working on a series of pieces for the website, and we're always working on the messaging with our marketing team to make sure that all of what we're putting out into the world is inclusive and doesn't feel overly designed or overly overwrought with like everything being perfect or curated, but also feels like thoughtful and elevated and cared for. And I think there is a fine line there, because we live in a world where everything is so highly curated or designed that we want to make sure that people feel like it's welcoming to them. We can't reach everybody, but we can try through the words that we use and through the images we use as much as possible. But the educational component, that's something that we're more wholeheartedly jumping into this year now that we've launched clients and practitioners. Because there's just a lot that people might not know about these modalities. I didn't really understand acupuncture or know about it until I was in my 20s, and just somebody that I trusted recommended it, and it felt so far out to me. It was so incredibly helpful. So I think that if we can offer a safe space that's like judgment free for people to where we say like, here's here are the facts about this. Here's what we know about it, and here's how it's been helpful. If somebody doesn't have a friend or a relationship in their life that they can rely on to offer advice or suggest these sorts of modalities, we can provide that.
Absolutely. Well, I was going to ask you, everybody I know has a podcast. Are you guys going to set up a podcast? As a podcaster, I'm thinking, my gosh, they could easily, there's so many clinicians they could talk to, or experts they could speak to, and do more of that. I guess everybody doesn't have a podcast, though. That's good. I actually think of, I was talking to a guest off mic. I'll do it here. I jokingly said, I think of podcasting as the ham radio of the 2000s.
Yeah, totally.
It is kind of the ham radio. No matter how big I think my britches are, it doesn't matter. It's still kind of like, I think it should be that way too. I think there should be more, it should be more of a communication tool. If we're siloed, we should have fun in our silos. And this is one way to have fun in our silos, I guess. But I do think, seriously, getting back to the idea, I think that both the Open Path and the Healing Arts Collective would do a bang up job hosting a podcast. Just a thought. Keep it in mind. Yeah,
we have it hanging around there in our mind.
See, everyone has a podcast.
I know, we got to do it.
Everyone's a novelist now too.
Yeah, right. We're not moving into that territory anytime.
Okay, not yet. Not yet. Yes.
Oh, right. I mean, it makes so much sense to draw on the rich amount of information that all of these incredible clinicians and practitioners hold. There's so many brilliant people that have joined Healing Arts Collective and Open Path Psychotherapy Collective that it makes so much sense. It really is just our administrative capacity as a small nonprofit.
And you're a perfect soapbox for why mental health provision and in general and wellness and healing is such a back burner thing in this country. It's so ridiculous. It should be front and center, right? If you're part of a republic and you pay taxes to keep the republic running, you should at least get some decent health care out of it, right?
Yeah. I know. We've joked that the mission of Open Path is to put Open Path out of business, because everybody has access to mental health care and to holistic health care, but it doesn't look like that's going to happen anytime soon. Well,
yeah, exactly. I think most 501c3s would say we could, in the ideal situation, we put ourselves out of business. Yeah. As a healer and a psychologist, I always tell people my job is for you to fire me because I help you. We get to a resolution stage at some point, and we can still talk to each other, occasionally or whatever. But for the most part, you're good to go. So,
how did you know that you wanted to transition into the psychology world?
Well, see, you have a podcast already. Oh, well, thank you. That's a great question, Karie. I moseyed into it. Back in high school, I thought about being a psychologist or a psychotherapist, and then being the adolescent know-it-all that I was, I said, nah, people can figure out their own things, their own problems, even though I'd been in therapy in high school. And then it would just seem like a good fit. We were talking before we officially started the show. I was in visual arts initially, and then I got involved in performing arts and music. And it just like I started to see more overlap. I'm more of a bridge builder. In fact, I don't necessarily hold much merit in it, but that's what I show up as with the Enneagram, right? So it makes sense, and it's just I moseyed into it. I got hooked on hypnosis and doing that with people as a lay hypnotist, and someone wiser than me, my wife said, you like doing this. Why don't you just go back to school and become a psychologist? I swore off school years ago, honey. Oh, okay. Yeah. So that's kind of how I got into it.
Yeah. It seems like a really natural progression.
I think it is. I don't see them as, some of my academic colleagues or more research, statistician oriented colleagues and friends like in APA's Division 30 psychological hypnosis or elsewhere would say that they're not the same thing. They're different. But I mean, some of the heaviest hitters that we still rely on that Freud worked with, that he analyzed and then turned into analysans, such as Erik Erikson. He was a painter. He was an artist, and he just happened to kind of move into the world of psychotherapy and psychoanalysis. Developed his own theory that I think expanded wonderfully and more, psychosocial development rather than just drive theory or sexual functioning, reactance and whatnot. And I think that he, I quote him a lot. His psychoeducation with his theory is usually on the money, and it's a good way to. And there you go. He was a painter. He wasn't a psychiatrist. He wasn't a social worker. He wasn't a psychologist. But came up with a pretty darn good theory. Just and there you go. Once again, Mihai Csikszentmihalyi, who eventually developed the theory of flow, or I should say his grad students at U Chicago developed it for him, and he put his name on it. got better offers at universities. God rest his soul. He was a painter as well. He was an art student. There's a lot of people who make that crossover because people aren't one thing. People I don't think are mechanistic cogs in the wheel of life. And even though our cultures, our monolithic Western materialistic culture is very linear in its thinking process. Who has a linear experience in life? Gosh.
Right, which I think
it
creates a lot of pain because we think that we're supposed to be one thing, and then time passes and we find ourselves changing. And I think a lot of us try to resist that because it feels like we're not supposed to. But I think that's the main thing we're supposed to do is change.
I think we're supposed to have, kind of freak out. I had a cousin who was a hippie. And when I feel stuck, she'd say, why don't you freak out? I said, what do you mean? He said, well, put your thumb out, just go hitchhike, go out west, go see something else.
Do something different.
What about my job? And what about my electric blanket and my instant coffee? She said, it's all going to be there, Scott. I think you have to you have to be able to test the edges of reality for yourself. And I think, like, as you were saying, you get kind of stuck, right? Mm-hmm. You have to have these periods, these dark tea times of the soul in order to figure out what's, where you're at and shift things.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah. I mean, we were talking earlier about, before the show about like presence being important in art and therapy. But I think there's also such a connection with just compassion. Like there's so many folks that are incredibly feeling or intuitive or compassionate that end up in the fields of art or psychology or healthcare in some way. And so it makes sense that there's so much crossover.
Yeah, I think there's a good book that came out recently, and I interviewed the author, Michael Alsay. It's on therapeutic improvisation. And his two really good ideas in it are that there's therapeutic presence and empathy and kind of connection and flow. And then there's therapeutic authority, right? So, and which would be the sum of all those courses you had to memorize and forget the information with, and the ones that stuck with you that help you in the process of therapeutic presence. And I think that's kind of how you do the art and science of therapy or whatever. Even like as a visual artist, you need to know how to mix brown, right? And you need to kind of intuitively, you might be working with the canvas. You have to have a good eye for just the right tone or just the right shade, right, of something. And there is a kind of art and science, and the people who created those tubes of paint for you, if you're not mixing your own colors, which you could, which would have the science behind it, right? The alchemy of art. Yeah. I wonder, we're kind of diverging here a little bit, but I'm enjoying the conversation. But kind of getting back to you, was it when you discovered you had Lyme disease? Was it acupuncture that primarily helped you? Was it nutrition? Was it meditation? Was it a melange? Was it a confluence of those things?
Yeah, it was a mix. And so when we were building this program, it was important to us for folks to be able to see multiple practitioners too. So for me, it was antibiotics, and it was a lot of acupuncture, a lot of massage therapy to deal with the discomfort of, painful joints all the time. It was completely overhauling my nutrition, or how I ate, and a lot of yoga. So that takes a lot of time. Like it's a lot of time to take care of yourself in a world where that is not really encouraged. So having guides along the way was incredibly helpful. So it can get really pricey for folks if you're really going through something, and really need to have a cluster of folks that are on your side to help work out what's happening. It gets really expensive. And even just seeing one person once a month can really be not doable for a lot of people. So feels like it.
Yeah, it is pricey, but it's I think your description of that when you have something like a chronic or potentially chronic disorder, it's almost like you have to reestablish the relationship with yourself so that you can establish a relationship to what's going on in your body.
Yeah, I mean, I have to say, like, I had a therapist who was very helpful through that process, because I think that for me, I just went through this feeling where pain started to become this, like, I'm in pain, I don't feel good, like this larger cloud over me. And through therapy, I was able to really like drop in, and mindfulness, drop in and like find the edges of pain and find comfort. And so it was incredible how therapy really worked with these more somatic based modalities. So I could really like lean, whenever I was having an experience of pain, I could really lean into the areas of my body that were really comfortable and okay. And I think that that's really helpful in an emotional way too in life. Like, yes, there's discomfort all the time, and we have to sit in that and learn how to sit in that. And part of that has to do with like finding the edges of that discomfort and not letting it be everything, that it's just this thing right now. And there are also these areas that are really beautiful and wonderful and simple, and there's ease. So it was interesting for me to like look at the space between how those were really connected, like the physical and emotional, because I didn't grow up, in a way that I didn't grow up realizing that food affected how I felt. And so it just blew my mind that when I changed how I ate in my early 20s, that all of a sudden I felt clearer and like I felt happier or happier, whatever that means. But like I felt lighter and it was easier to think. And it had never occurred to me because that is really not part of the language of American culture.
No, it is not. It is, I don't think it's the language of most Western culture. It's, this is mechanistic idea. You're born, you grow to a certain age, and then, then you die at some point and you fall apart. But like, we've been so cut off, not just from our environment, but even though we've developed a lot of very excellent naturopathic and allopathic ways of approaching health and wellness, I think that overall we're disconnected from our minds and our bodies, right? Yeah. It's dropping back into yourself and being able to give some space for that to just be.
Well, I mean, it's constant, like to continue to come back to yourself and reflect and look at, whatever experience you're having, whether it's physical or emotional, mental, like, because also it can be hard and scary. It's not fun to look at that stuff. It's not like we want to focus on the things that are hard, but it really, for me, at least, it really turned into like a larger narrative around like, if you can look at these small parts of like pain in your body, that leads to like being able to look at small pieces of pain emotionally or mentally. Mm-hmm. And then that leads to like looking at like larger parts of your life where you're like, oh, I can sit through discomfort. I can sit through pain. And mm-hmm. It actually smooths so many things out. It was having chronic pain was an incredible teacher for me. And I'm fortunate enough that I like moved through that. I know, and I don't have much left from that experience. That was a few years ago now, probably 5 years ago. I know a lot of people, don't get to move through that. So I don't know what that's like for a really long sustained period of time. For me, it was a period of like 4 years. But I think there's so much learning in there. I feel appreciative for having that experience and having the right group of people helping me, therapists and acupuncturists, nutritionists, all of those people on my side, helping me look at those things within myself and reflect.
Did you see a shift in just in everything? Did it shift who you hung out with? Did it shift how you identified as a person?
I think that there were dangers in me shifting how I identified as a person. I think that it can be really easy to fall into identifying just with pain and not with the other parts of life. And so I was really mindful of that because it's really depressing to feel bad. And so it can be really like frustrating and make you angry, and it made me feel all sorts of things. It did end up affecting who I spent time with, because I think that there's this feeling that we need to be like on or happy or excited or whatever when we're with people. Like we're only allowed to have those emotions. And then our very, very intimate people, partners or family, we're allowed to be like cranky and mean or whatever. And I think that with
if we're lucky,
yeah, if we're lucky, yeah, if we're lucky, not everybody gets that. But for me, I realized that like, since I was in so much pain so regularly, if I didn't just show up to friendships, whether I felt terrible or not, I wouldn't have relationships. So I learned to be more accepting of me being like not totally on, not totally excited, not totally happy, and let that be okay, to just show up as myself to relationships and show up as well as I could and be as present as I could. And I think that's, I think that I had like a great community that like stuck with me through that. And I will forever want to reciprocate that kind of like presence. Mm-hmm. but also it definitely shifts relationships, because some people don't want to see dark stuff or don't want to deal with the discomfort. So it's easier to just not.
Well, I mean, it's kind of like wrestling with your shadow and making buddies with it. And if some people don't, denial goes a long way. And denial is not just a river in Egypt.
Right. Yeah.
It's like it goes a long way in our culture. So works pretty well. Sometimes too well. But you certainly, it sounds like you figured out who your true BFFs were and who they weren't, right?
Yeah. And I mean, I knew myself so much more through that process, and have been able to continue to build good relationships as much as I can.
Yeah. And knowing that it adds to your mission, your drive for the mission for the collective, right? I mean, being able to share that story with people.
Oh my God. Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, everyone has some kind of complicated life experience, whether it's just, constant stress, or just a lot of life responsibilities, or chronic pain, or some acute experience. Everyone has something that they're dealing with. I think that can be easy to forget when we each have so much going on. And I mean, that's why we also wanted to offer a few different disciplines for folks, because there's so many different ways for people to heal, and not everything works for everyone. Everybody is so different. They're such complex creatures. It's helpful to have different approaches.
Yeah. Well, it sounds like there's a large, excuse me. Sounds like there's a large enough pool for the clientele to choose from. And are you doing any interaction with them from your end to kind of coach them into how to reach out to people and put together a team?
Yeah, we have some resources. Each practitioner, they have a dashboard, and they have different resources in that dashboard for talking to clients with how the process should go, talking to clients about money, all sorts of different documents that help support their practice and meeting with clients. I'd love to talk about the process for practitioners to sign up and clients to sign up, if that's
sure.
Because I feel like maybe some of your listeners could be great, might be a good fit for them as a client, or, they might offer some of these disciplines and want to share them with people.
Sure. Go ahead.
So for practitioners, it really is, I mentioned the eligibility requirements for each of these folks, but it's pretty simple. It's an application online. It takes about 10 minutes. That information that we collect, part of it becomes their profile page on our site. So they'll fill out the application and then send in their supporting documents to us by email. And that includes licenses or certifications, proof of education. And then we review it. Usually just takes a couple of days, and we'll publish their profile. And so they have their own profile on our page, similar to OpenPath. So they'll be searchable by...
And that's absolutely free to the practitioners to list.
Exactly.
Okay.
Yeah, okay. That's free. And it is, again, really simple. Really about 10 minutes. They just need to have a bio ready and information about where they went to school, all of those sorts of things. And then they're searchable through their specialties. So if they like to focus on helping people with their allergies or overall well-being, those sorts of things, people can search by specialty, people can search by location, or they can search by that practitioner's name or discipline. So somebody a potential client could come to the site and say, I really want to see a massage therapist in the Denver area, and just search for that. They also could have been told about a person that's on Healing Arts Collective and search by their name, or they don't really know what discipline they want to see someone under, so they search by specialty. So maybe you have issues with allergies, and you search for someone in the Denver area, and someone that practices acupuncture shows up, and somebody that practices nutrition. So you have a choice there if you want to, what path you want to take.
Wow.
And then for clients can search the site. They can reach out by all those different, search terms. They can reach out directly to practitioners to make sure it's the right fit or their schedules can align. And then they just need to go through a pretty quick application registration. It's a $49 one-time lifetime fee. So there's no subscription cost. It's really just $49. That's it. And then they have access to all of the folks that are offering their services on Healing Arts Collective for $30 to $60 sliding scale. And so once they make contact with that practitioner and start that relationship, they work out with the practitioner where on that sliding scale they fall and what feels most appropriate between the two of them. So it's actually very straightforward and pretty simple for both people, both practitioners and clients.
Excellent. Okay. Well, what's the response been from the clients thus far? Have you had a lot of sign up? Has there been a lot of excitement?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, again, people have been saying it's unbelievable. This hasn't already existed. It just makes so much sense.
Yeah.
It makes so much sense. And so we had when we launched in April, since then we've had a huge amount of folks signing up. We're a small program. We have Google AdWords grants, and we, dedicate money towards Facebook and Instagram advertising, but we are definitely not funded by venture capitalists. We're a nonprofit. And so really we're trying to get the word out as much as possible, word of mouth. And anyway, thank you for having us on the podcast. All of these sorts of things are so helpful because we can't battle the larger for-profit companies. But, people know when something works. And so we just want to get people that need these services to get them, and then they can share with their communities if, it feels like a
absolutely. Good... Yeah. Well, thank you for coming on and sharing this so that our listeners can find out about it and we can spread the good word. I will say that from my own work using, working with Open Path and being a clinician there for, since 2015 or something. I don't know when I signed up. I signed up a lot
early. Ago. That's amazing.
I was pretty early. Yeah. I've been there since the inception and I thought it was brilliant then. And I think it's brilliant now. And I've had good experiences with many of the clients, and I've had clients come to me who've been utilizing it more than once. Like they might work with a therapist, resolve something, decide to, terminate or leave that person's work, and then they'll look for somebody else. I've seen people who've used it more than once and they trust it, and it's a good way to vet a fine clinician and to now a healing arts practitioner with this collective. So Karie Reinertson, thank you so much for sharing your story, sharing the collective with us. And do you have anything else you'd like to say before we sign off?
No, just visit us, healingarts.org. And also openpathcollective.org is our mental health component. Oh, I really appreciate you asking me on. Thank you so much.
Oh, you're very welcome. Thank you for this heartfelt conversation. It was fun.
Yeah, thanks.
Thank you. Thank you for listening to the Psychology Talk podcast. Did you know you can find us on the web all over the place? Well, maybe not all over the place, but you can find us on Instagram, you can find us on Facebook, you can find us at Spreaker, Stitcher, Apple Podcasts, loads of places. Please look for us, and if you can, subscribe, like us, leave us a review, send us a comment, a criticism, Hey, we like to hear a lot from people. Go ahead, talk to us. That's why we're here. By the way, this is just a reminder to let you know that all of the material here is for entertainment and informative purposes only. If you do need a therapist or a mental health professional, please seek one out. Music is provided by the band Serenati.